They found soldiers chained to their guns. They saw civilians, clutching their own children, jumping from seaside cliffs. US Marines and GIs were prepared to fight a soldier. They were not prepared to fight an entire population, an enemy whose loyalty was so absolute, it looked like madness. April 1st, 1945. Easter Sunday, 8:30 hours. The Hagushi Beaches, western coast of Okinawa. The ramp of the LCVP, landing craft vehicle personnel, slams down into the surf, and for a moment, the world is nothing but noise. The roar of the offshore Fleet 14 battleships, dozens of cruisers and destroyers, a continuous, rolling thunder. Smoke, thick and acrid, blends with the salt spray, stinging the eyes of the men from the 1st and 6th Marine Divisions. You are one of them. Or perhaps you're a GI with the Army's 7th or 96th Infantry Divisions hitting the beaches just south. It doesn't matter. The feeling is the same. Your M1 Garand is slick with salt water and sweat. Your knuckles are white on the stock. This is it. This is Operation Iceberg, the largest amphibious assault of the Pacific War. The intelligence briefings were grim. Expect 70% casualties, the officers said. This is the doorstep to Japan. They will fight to the last man. The men brace for the buzzsaw of Nambu machine guns. They wait for the thump hiss of knee mortars. They expect a repeat of Peleliu's bloody ridges or Iwo Jima's black ash. Private First Class Eugene Sledge, a mortarman with K Company, 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines, hits the coral sand and scrambles for the 8-foot-high seawall. He and his comrades go over the top, weapons ready, screaming to clear their throats of fear. And they find nothing. The beach is silent, save for the sound of their own boots and the receding tide. There are no machine gun nests spitting fire, no banzai chargers emerging from spider holes. The massive, pre-invasion bombardment has torn the landscape apart, but the defenders are gone. The GIs and Marines look at each other, their adrenaline-fueled shouts dying in their throats. It's quiet, too quiet. By 10 a.m., thousands of men are ashore. They cross the island, seizing the Yontan and Kadena airfields with almost no resistance. It's a walk-in. Lieutenant General Simon Bolivar Buckner Jr., commander of the newly formed U.S. 10th Army, is deeply suspicious. The Japanese commander, Lieutenant General Mitsuru Ushijima, is no fool. This isn't a retreat, it's an invitation. Ushijima has conceded the beaches, pulling his 110,000-man 32nd Army into a complex, subterranean fortress in the island's southern third. A fortress built into the limestone hills and ridges. He's waiting for the Americans to come to him. But the first true shock of Okinawa isn't the Japanese army. It's the civilians. As the American forces push inland, they move through shattered villages. They've been trained to view the Okinawans as Japanese, but these people are different. They're a distinct culture, caught between two empires. But years of Japanese propaganda have done their work. The Imperial Japanese Army has told the Okinawan civilians, the men, the women, the children, that the Americans are not human. They are white devils, barbarians who will rape, torture, and eat them. They have been told that a quick, honorable death is infinitely better than capture. A patrol from the 7th Infantry Division approaches a small cluster of Hakka traditional Okinawan burial tombs built into a hillside. They hear movement inside. A Nisei interpreter, a Japanese-American soldier, calls out in Japanese, "Come out. We have food and water. Det kudasai. We will not harm you." There's a terrified scream from within, then a muffled thump. The soldiers, cautious of a booby trap, toss in a smoke grenade and rush the entrance. The smoke clears. The scene inside stops them cold. It's a family. An old man, a mother, and 3 small children. There is no Japanese soldier, no bomb. The mother is slumped against the wall, a sicklier simple farmer's tool clutched in her hand. She has just cut the throats of her children, and then her own. The old man has used a straight razor. The GIs, veterans of brutal island campaigns, just stand there, mute. They've seen death in every form. But this is something new. This isn't combat. This is a perversion of the human will. Further inland, A Marine squad finds another group huddled in a cave. They try to coax them out. A young woman, maybe 18, walks to the mouth of the cave, holding a baby. She looks at the Marines, her eyes hollow. Then, before anyone can react, she turns and hurls her baby off the cliff, jumping immediately after. This is the Americans' introduction to the impossible loyalty. It's not the fanaticism of a soldier defending his homeland. It's the result of a state-sponsored indoctrination so total, so absolute, that it has erased the most basic instinct of survival. The Japanese military has weaponized its own people, and as the first days of April turn into the second week, the American forces finally reach the outer edges of General Ushijima's main defenses. They've seen the horrifying loyalty of the civilians. Now, they're about to see what the soldiers will do. They are about to enter a place that will be seared into the American consciousness. They are about to hit the Shuri Line. The Shuri Line is not a trench. It is a god machine, a fortress of interlocking, subterranean positions dug not just into the limestone ridges of southern Okinawa, but through them. It is a defense in 3 dimensions, designed by Lieutenant General Ushijima and his brilliant Chief of Staff, Major General Isamu Cho, for one purpose: to bleed the American 10th Army white. April 9th, 1945. Kakazu Ridge. The GIs of the 96th Infantry Division, the Deadeyes, are the first to hit this wall. After the strange, quiet landing, this is the war they were promised. Kakazu Ridge rises in front of them, an unassuming, scrub-covered hill, but as the first wave of men from the 383rd Infantry Regiment moves up its slopes, the ridge opens. Steel scythes through the air from dozens of apertures the Americans didn't even see. Machine guns, 20mm cannons, and 47mm anti-tank guns fire from concrete pillboxes, camouflaged with coral and mud. But these aren't isolated positions. They are connected. A GI lobs a grenade into a firing slit. The crump is satisfying, but seconds later, an identical Nambu opens up from another slit 20 yards away. The crew simply moved through a tunnel. Sherman tanks rumble forward, their 75mm guns blasting at the concrete. The shells spark and chip the fortifications, but rarely penetrate. The tanks are met with a torrent of anti-tank fire from guns hidden on the reverse slope of the next ridge over, guns that the Americans cannot see. A flamethrower Team 2 men, burdened and slow crawls forward. The man with the wand, Private Nathan Johnson, lets loose a 2,000-degree jet of jellied gasoline. It streams into a pillbox, and the screams from inside are short and horrific. Johnson collapses behind a rock, his chest heaving. His partner pats him on the back. Then, a spider hole opens behind them. A Japanese soldier, his face grim, rises from the earth, shoves a pole charger bomb on a stick against the flamethrower's fuel tanks, and pulls the pin. The explosion vaporizes all 3 men. This is the new rule of engagement. The Japanese aren't fighting to win. They are fighting to kill. They are not fighting to hold ground. They are fighting to trade their lives for as many American lives as possible. While the Deadeyes are being crucified on Kakazu, the U.S. Navy is tasting the other side of this doctrine. Out on the picket line, a ring of destroyers tasked with intercepting airborne attacks, the sailors' eyes are glued to the sky. This is the hunting ground of the Kikusui, or floating chrysanthemum, the Kamikaze. On the destroyer USS Laffey, the radar room is screaming. Bandits, 20+, bearing 330. They come out of the clouds. Mitsubishi Zeros, Judy dive bombersaul stripped down and packed with 500-pound bombs. The Laffey's 5-inch guns and 40mm Bofors cannons throw a wall of flak into the sky, but it's like trying to stop a tidal wave with a screen door. A Zero, its wings shot to ribbons, doesn't try to pull up. The pilot, a man no older than the sailors shooting at him, stays in his dive. He slams into the Laffey's aft gun turret. The explosion is blinding. Shrapnel cuts down half the gun crew. Before the crew can even fight the fires, another Zero comes in low, clipping the mast and cartwheeling into the superstructure. In the span of 80 minutes, the USS Laffey is struck by 6 kamikaze aircraft and 4 bombs. The ship is a burning wreck, but she doesn't sink. The pilots, however, chose this. They flew to their deaths with a loyalty their American counterparts simply could not comprehend. Why not drop the bomb and try to fly home? The concept is alien. Back on Kakazu Ridge, the 96th Division is finding its own human bombs. A patrol clearing a ditch finds what looks like a wounded Japanese soldier. He's groaning, holding his stomach. The medic, a 9-year-old from Ohio named Desmond Doss, moves to help him, despite being a conscientious objector who refuses to carry a weapon. As he gets close, another GI shouts, "Grenade!" The wounded soldier has pulled the pins on 2 Type 97 grenades clutched to his chest. Doss, reacting on pure instinct, kicks the grenades away as they detonate, saving the patrol but taking grievous wounds to his legs. In another sector, a GI patrol is pinned by a machine gun. They spot a dead Japanese soldier nearby, lying next to a satchel charge. As they crawl past, the corpse leaps up, screaming, "Tenno Haika Banzai, long live the Emperor," and lunges for the nearest American, pulling the fuse on the charge. He embraces the GI, and they disintegrate in a red mist. The Americans are trapped. They can't trust the living, they can't trust the wounded, and they can't even trust the dead. They are fighting an enemy for whom surrender is not an option. Death is the goal. The 96th Division attacks Kakazu Ridge for 5 solid days. They are bled dry, suffering over 1,500 casualties for a single hill. They are forced to pull back. The generals, including General Buckner, are stunned. This isn't just a fanatical defense. It's a systematic, industrial-scale meat grinder, and Kakazu was just the first hill. Beyond it lay the rest of the Shuri Line. Ahead of them lay a place the Marines would soon call Loaf. The battle for Okinawa had just begun. May 11th, 1945. The Shuri Line. The battle for Okinawa has devolved into something primeval. The optimism of April is a distant, bitter joke. The dead eyes of the 96th, bled white at Kakazu, have been relieved. The 27th Infantry Division was thrown against the line. They too were shattered. Now, the 77th Statue of Liberty Division is grinding itself to pieces. The rain has come. A late-season monsoon that turns the battlefield into a single, contiguous swamp of mud, shell fragments, and human decomposition. PFC Eugene Sledge and his K-35 mortar crew are moved south, into the line. The first thing that hits them is not the sound, but the smell. It's a stench so thick it has a physical weight. The sweet, gagging odor of thousands of decomposing bodies, Japanese and Americanizing in the sun, now churned into the mud by the rain and the endless artillery. Maggots, fat and white, cover everything. They crawl over the GI's rations. They fill the sea ration cans the men use as primitive latrines. This is the hell that General Buckner now throws his elite. The 1st and 6th Marine Divisions are ordered into the center of the Shuri Line. Their target is a complex of 3 hills that form the western anchor of the Japanese defense. Loaf, Half Moon, and Horseshoe. May 12th. Loaf Hill. From a distance, it's nothing. A mound of mud and shattered stumps, maybe 50 feet high. But like Kakazu, it is hollow. It's a fortress, and it's the linchpin. The Japanese know this. The 6th Marine Division attacks. The moment the Marines break cover, they are thrown into a perfectly engineered kill box. Heavy mortars and 75mm artillery from Shuri Castle itself rain down. But the real killers are the machine guns. Nambus, hidden on Half Moon Hill to the east, and others on Horseshoe Ridge to the south, are reverse-sloped. They are zeroed in on the flanks of Loaf. A Marine platoon makes it to the crest. They hold it for an hour, screaming for reinforcements, before a Japanese counterattack, not a screaming banzai charge, but a disciplined tactical push from hidden tunnels behind them wipes them out. For 10 days, the battle for Loaf Hill is waged in yards. It is taken and retaken more than 11 times. Sherman tanks are brought up, firing point-blank into the caves. They are knocked out by 47mm anti-tank guns hidden inside other caves. It's here that the impossible loyalty takes on a new, mechanical religious horror. A squad from the 22nd Marines, using flamethrowers and satchel charges, finally neutralizes a key pillbox that has pinned them down for 2 days. They blast the entrance, wait for the secondary explosions, and then crawl into the darkness. M1S ready. The air is thick with cordite and roasted flesh. They find the machine gun crew. 3 men, burned to charcoal. The Marine squad leader, a corporal named Davis, kicks the Nambu machine gun off its tripod. It won't budge. He shines his flashlight down. The gunner's ankle is chained to the leg of the weapon. The Americans just stare. This wasn't fanaticism. This wasn't Bushido. This was a cold, calculated order. The Japanese soldier wasn't expected to die at his post. He was forced to. He had no choice. He was a human component of the gun, and his loyalty was ensured with a padlock. This discovery ripples through the American ranks. It changes them. The simmering hatred for an enemy that doesn't surrender turns into a cold, exterminating fury. If the Japanese won't surrender, if they have to be chained to their guns, then the Americans will simply oblige them with death. The rules of civilized war, already thin, evaporate. A patrol from the 1st Marine Division, moving through the ruins of Wana Ridge, corners a group of Japanese soldiers in a burial tomb. Surrender. The Nisei interpreter yells, his voice cracking. You will be treated well. There's a short, muffled burst of yelling from inside. Then, a single pistol shot. The Marines tense, waiting for a final charge. The Japanese soldiers have detonated their grenades, killing themselves en masse rather than be captured. The Americans, soaked, exhausted, and psychologically shattered, don't even open the tomb. They just move on. We were fighting an animal. Sledge would later write. The Japanese had been told that we would torture them, and they believed it. So they fought to the death. There was no other choice. The GIs and Marines stopped taking prisoners. Why bother? The Japanese who do try to surrender are often faking, hiding a grenade. It's easier, safer, to just shoot them. Shoot the wounded. Shoot the ones feigning death. Shoot everyone. The impossible loyalty of the Japanese has created an impossible situation for the Americans, forcing them to adopt a policy of annihilation to survive. By late May, the Shuri Line is finally, irrevocably broken. Sugarloaf falls, Wana Ridge falls. The Japanese 32nd Army is shattered, but not defeated. General Ushijima orders a full retreat from the Shuri Line, but it's not a route. It's a tactical withdrawal to a final, desperate defensive line at the far southern tip of the island. And as they retreat, they take the civilians with them. The true, final horror of Okinawa is about to begin. June 10th, 1945. The southern tip of Okinawa. The great, organized defense of the Shuri Line is gone. The battle is no longer a war. It is a pursuit, a manhunt. The U.S. 10th Army Marines of the 1st and 6th, the Army's 7th, 77th, and 96th Divisions are all pushing south. A massive, crushing force, compressing what's left of the Japanese 32nd Army into the island's final, rocky perimeter. But the Japanese are not alone. General Ushijima has forced the civilian population south with him. An estimated 100,000 Okinawan-sold men, women, children, the sick, and the wounded are now trapped in the same kill box as the remnants of his army. The landscape is a pulverized grey and brown moonscape, cratered by a constant rolling barrage from American naval guns and artillery. And moving through this lunar hell is a tide of human misery. A squad from the 1st Marine Division, led by a battle-hardened sergeant named Harris, crests a small hill. They stop. The road below is choked with refugees. They are skeletons, their kimonos and work clothes hanging in tatters. Their legs are swollen with elephantiasis and wet beriberi. They are starving, but the Japanese army is in the refugee column. Soldiers, having shed their uniforms for civilian clothes, move among the Okinawans. They use the civilians as human shields. A GI raises his rifle to fire at a Japanese soldier, only to see the soldier pull a child in front of him as a shield. The GI lowers his weapon, his face a mask of disgust. The Japanese have stolen the civilians' last remaining food. They have kicked them out of the dry caves, reserving the best defensive positions for themselves. The ultimate loyalty to the emperor has translated into an ultimate, cold-blooded betrayal of the Okinawan people, and the propaganda has reached its zenith. U.S. Loudspeaker teams, in armored vehicles, move up to the lines. Nisei translators plead with the civilians. Come out, America jin wa anata o kizutsukenai. The Americans will not hurt you. We have food. We have medicine. To the GIs, this is a simple, logical offer. To the Okinawans, it is the devil's trick. They have been told, for years, by Japanese soldiers and officials that capture means an unspeakable, agonizing death. They have been told the Americans will rape the women, then run them over with tanks. They have been told the GIs will eat their children, and they have been given the tools for an honorable escape. Japanese soldiers have handed out Type 97 hand grenades to families. One is enough, they are told, for the family. June 12th, Mabuni, a patrol from the 96th Infantry Division, is moving along the high, sheer cliffs of the southern coast. They hear the screaming. It's not the shriek of combat. It's a wail of pure terror. They edge to the precipice. What they witness sears itself into their minds forever. Below them, on the rocks and in the churning sea, are bodies, hundreds of them, and more are coming. A young Okinawan mother, her hair wild, is clutching two small children. She runs, full tilt, toward the edge. A GI, no older than 19, screams, "No, stop!" He tries to run to her, but he's too far away. She doesn't look back. She leaps, clutching her children, into the void. The Americans watch, paralyzed by a horror they cannot process. An entire family, a father, mother, and 3 teenagers link arms, bow toward the unseen emperor, and calmly walk off the cliff. They see Japanese soldiers facilitating it. They are assisting in the Gyokusai, the shattered jewel, the doctrine of mass suicide. A group of civilians hesitates at the edge. A Japanese soldier, his own uniform in rags, shouts at them, then calmly rolls a grenade into their midst. The explosion sends bodies, and parts of bodies, tumbling down. Throw yourselves from the cliffs. The soldiers are screaming. It is a better death. The GIs try to intervene. They fire at the Japanese soldiers, but it's chaos. A Marine squad farther down the coast finds a cave packed with civilians. The Marines try to coax them out. We have chocolate, chocoretto, water, mizu. From the back of the cave, a Japanese officer gives a sharp command. The Marines hear a hiss, the thump, the thump. The officer has detonated his grenades, killing himself and the 50 civilians he was trapped with. This is the impossible loyalty. It is a loyalty so profound, so twisted, that it has turned civilians into suicides and mothers into the murderers of their own children. The Americans are not just fighting an army, they are fighting an idea, a cultural virus that prefers annihilation to the dishonor of survival. They are shocked, they are sickened, and they are enraged. They have seen an enemy that not only refuses to surrender, but forces its own innocent people to commit mass suicide. As the last pockets of civilians are rounded, up, dazed, starving, and still terrified, the 10th Army turns its full, undivided, and furious attention to the last man. The man responsible for all of it, General Ushijima, hidden deep in his final command bunker, just yards from these very cliffs. June 21st, 1945, Hill 89, Mabuni. The battle for Okinawa is officially over, but the island is still bleeding. The American flag of the 1st Marine Division flies over a shattered Shuri castle. The U.S. 10th Army has reached the southern cliffs. General Buckner, the American commander, has himself been killed by a stray artillery shell just days before, becoming the highest-ranking American officer to die in combat in the entire war. But the organized resistance has collapsed. The battle has entered its mopping-up, facier, grim, dirty business of hunting down individual soldiers and small suicidal units, still hiding in the thousands of caves and tombs that pockmark the southern ridges. The focus of the entire American force is now on one small, unassuming limestone hill, Hill 89. This is the final command post of the Japanese 32nd Army. Deep inside its warren of tunnels, Lieutenant General Mitsuru Ushijima and his brilliant, fiery Chief of Staff, Major General Isamu Cho, are listening to the end of their world. The American 32nd Infantry Regiment is on top of them. GIs are dropping satchel charges and pouring gasoline into the cave vents, trying to flush them out. The air inside the command bunker is thick with smoke, the smell of death, and the suffocating humidity. For Ushijima, the battle is lost, but the mission is a success. He has held the Americans on Okinawa for 82 days. He has bled them for every inch. He has sacrificed his entire army and over 150,000 Okinawan civilians to buy Japan a few more weeks to prepare for the final invasion. Now, there is only one thing left to do. Surrender is not a word in his vocabulary. 4 hours, June 22nd. Outside, in the pre-dawn darkness, the Marines and GIs hear the whump of grenades and sporadic rifle fire from the cave entrance. It's the last, defiant banzai charge of Ushijima's personal guard, a final, suicidal spasm to buy their general a few more minutes of peace. Inside, the scene is not one of panic. It is cold, ancient, and ritualistic. General Ushijima, a man of calm, aristocratic bearing, and General Cho, intense and glaring even in defeat, are preparing for seppuku. They are no longer in their mud-caked uniforms. They are wearing fresh, formal kimonos. A white cloth, a symbolic purification, is laid out on a rock ledge overlooking the sea they can no longer see. Bottles of sake and a final meager farewell meal have been shared with their staff. Ushijima kneels on the cloth. His adjutant, Captain Yoshino, stands behind him, holding a samurai sword. This is the role of the Kaishakunin, the second, whose duty it is to perform the ritual beheading the moment the general makes the cut, to spare him the dishonor of a lingering, agonizing death. A U.S. infantry patrol, having just wiped out the last of the banzai charge, is moving cautiously toward this very entrance. They are yards away. Ushijima calmly writes his death poem. He picks up the tanto, the ritual dagger. He looks at Cho, who kneels beside him, ready for his own turn. The Americans hear nothing. Ushijima shouts a final guttural, "Banzai!" unfastens his kimono, and plunges the blade deep into the left side of his own stomach. Captain Yoshino swings the sword. Moments later, General Cho does the same. Captain Yoshino performs his duty a second time, before turning his own pistol on himself. When the GIs from the 32nd Infantry finally breach the command cave, this is the scene that greets them. They find the two headless bodies, still kneeling, the ceremonial daggers clutched in their hands. The heads are gone, hidden by a loyal aide so the Americans cannot take them as trophies. The Americans, men who have seen every possible form of death in the last 3 months, are simply awestruck. They have just witnessed the ultimate expression of the impossible loyalty. These weren't conscripts chained to a gun. These weren't civilians brainwashed into jumping from cliffs. These were the army's supreme commanders, men who could have chosen to surrender, but who instead embraced a brutal, ritualistic self-destruction as the only honorable end. They find General Cho's final message, scrawled on a piece of paper. "I die without regret, fear, or shame. I am happy to die for my emperor." This is the final, chilling piece of evidence. The battle for Okinawa is over. The cost is staggering. Over 12,500 Americans are dead or missing. 110,000 Japanese soldiers have been annihilated. And in the crossfire and in the mass suicide is an estimated 150,000 Okinawan civilians are dead, nearly 1/3 of the island's population. The campaign has been a success, but as the news of this final, ritualistic suicide, of the civilian massacres, and of the chained-down gunners reaches Washington, it presents a terrifying new equation for President Harry S. Truman. July 1945. The White House, Washington, D.C. The reports from Okinawa are not just casualty lists. They are psychological horror stories. They land on the desk of President Harry S. Truman, a man who has been in office for mere months. The numbers themselves are sickening. Over 12,500 American dead, nearly 40,000 wounded. The U.S. Navy has suffered its worst losses of the war, with 36 ships sunk and 368 damaged, mostly by the Kamikaze. The 10th Army has been effectively destroyed and rebuilt while in combat. The campaign has consumed 82 days. But it's not the cost in numbers that shocks Truman and the Joint Chiefs. It's the cost in will. The reports detail the scenes from the Mabuni cliffs. They describe the Gyokusai, the mass civilian suicides. They describe mothers, poisoned by their own army's propaganda, hurling their babies into the sea. They describe the chained machine gunners. They describe the final, ritualistic seppuku of General Ushijima. This is the impossible loyalty of the Japanese, laid bare. Military planners in the Pentagon begin a new, terrifying calculation. They have been planning Operation Downfall, the invasion of the Japanese home islands, set for November 1945. The projections were already grim. Now they are apocalyptic. Okinawa was an island of 463 square miles. The Japanese defended it with 110,000 regular troops and 20,000 Okinawan conscripts. The home island of Kyushu, the first target, would be defended by an estimated 900,000 regular troops, and behind them, the entire civilian population. Intercepted Japanese communications, codenamed Magic, confirm the worst fears. The Japanese government is implementing Operation Ketsugo, the decisive plan. It is a plan for a national Gyokusai. The entire population, 8 million men, women and children, is being armed, not just with rifles and mortars, but with bamboo spears, kitchen knives and satchel charges. They are being trained as suicide bombers, taught to strap explosives to their bodies and throw themselves under American tanks. The slogan being broadcast across Japan is, 100 million will die for the Emperor. Truman looks at the data from Okinawa. He sees that 110,000 Japanese soldiers were annihilated, 98% casualty rate. Only 7,400 were taken prisoner, and most of those were wounded, unconscious, or forced laborers. He sees the 150,000 dead civilians. He now applies that math to mainland Japan. If the Japanese army and civilians on Okinawa fought with this level of fanatical, no-surrender loyalty, what would they do on the soil of their sacred homeland? The estimates for Operation Downfall are projected at 1 million American casualties. The estimates for Japanese deaths, military and civilian, are between 5 and 10 million. It would not be a war, it would be a continental-scale Okinawa, a mutual slaughter that would dwarf everything that had come before. Truman is faced with an impossible choice. He has one hand on the order for Operation Downfall, an order that he knows will send 1 million young Americans to their deaths or maiming, and in his other hand, he has a secret. A report from a test in the New Mexico desert, a place called Trinity. A new weapon, a terrible new expression of physical force that could end the war in an instant. The impossible loyalty of the Japanese soldier, a fanaticism that shocked the American GI from the beaches of Hagushi to the cliffs of Mabuni, had just met its counter, the impossible weapon of the Americans. The GIs and Marines who survived Okinawa were being refitted, rearmed, and placed on transports for the invasion of Japan. They wrote letters home, their hands still shaking from the shelling, telling their families they did not expect to survive the next landing. But for them, the order to invade would never come. The decision was made. The horror of Okinawa civilian suicides, the chained gunners, the refusal to surrender, even in the face of certain annihilation, had convinced American leadership that Japan would not be defeated by conventional means. They would have to be shocked out of their loyalty. The fire that consumed Okinawa was about to be unleashed, 1,000-fold, on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The world was about to change forever, and the fuse had been lit in the limestone caves by the impossible loyalty of the Japanese soldier.